In a family where wealth defines worth, Camila, a humble schoolteacher, is suddenly accused of stealing $500,000 from her father's empire. With forged evidence pointing straight at her, suspicion turns into betrayal, and the perfect sister hides a dangerous secret. As lies unravel and loyalties shatter, Camila must fight not only to clear her name, but to break free from a legacy built on money and silence. This isn't just a story about fraud, it's a battle for identity, truth, and the courage to stand against blood itself. Before I share how this nightmare unfolded, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you love real stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, you'll want to see how this one ends. My name is Camila Matthews. I'm 32 years old, and I've always thought of myself as the ordinary daughter. Ordinary but steady. I'm a third-grade teacher at Oak Ridge Elementary, and while my paycheck is modest, the joy in my students' eyes when they finally master multiplication or finish reading a chapter book is worth more than any bonus or stock option. My classroom is filled with construction paper projects, messy science experiments, and hand-drawn thank you notes. That's where I feel like myself, valued, respected, and proud. But outside those classroom walls, I often feel invisible. You see, I was born into a family where success wasn't measured in laughter, kindness, or impact. It was measured in dollars and cents. My father, Peter Matthews, built a financial consulting firm from scratch and turned it into one of the region's most respected businesses. He speaks in numbers the way some people speak in poetry: balance sheets, market forecasts, investment portfolios. And he expected his children to share that same language. One of us did. My sister Lisa is 4 years older than me, and she was always the golden child. She earned straight A's, went to an Ivy League business school, and landed a lucrative job as a senior loan officer at First National Bank. She drives a luxury car, wears designer suits, and can quote interest rate projections off the top of her head. At every family dinner, Dad hangs on her every word, nodding in approval as if her insights about the stock market were gospel. Me? When the conversation turns my way, it's usually a polite, "So how are the kids in your class?" I'll talk about the new reading program I developed or how we built ecosystems in 2-liter bottles. But within seconds, the conversation shifts back to Lisa's world of money and influence. I can't count the number of times my father has said, "Your sister understands what really matters." What he means is, money really matters. I used to let that sting eat at me, but over the years, I carved out my own identity. I saved quietly, diligently, scraping together every extra dollar for my dream. A small condo of my own in Westbrook, a neighborhood where I could finally breathe without worrying about a roommate's mess or rising rent. While Lisa flaunted her success, I carried my own private victory, the knowledge that one day I'd hold the keys to a place that was truly mine. For all our differences, Lisa and I maintained a functional relationship. Lunch every few weeks, birthday gifts, polite texts. We weren't close, but we weren't estranged either. That balance, her being the shining star, me being the quiet one, had existed for decades. I didn't love it, but I accepted it. And then came that family dinner. The Matthews family dinners were a tradition my father insisted on. Once a month, everyone gathered at my parents' colonial-style home. The antique cherrywood dining table was set with fine china and crystal glasses. My mother, Eleanor, usually fussed over the food, while Dad presided at the head of the table like a CEO at a board meeting. These dinners were predictable, sometimes tedious, but always orderly. Until one night, when everything shattered. I remember the details with terrifying clarity: the smell of roast chicken, the clink of silverware, the low hum of polite conversation. And then, my father setting down his fork, looking me straight in the eye with an expression that froze my blood. "Camila, tell me, what did you do with the $500,000 I gave you?" My fork slipped against my plate, the sound far too loud in the sudden silence. My breath caught in my throat. $500,000? I whispered. "What are you talking about?" Across the table, Lisa turned pale as porcelain, her hand trembling as she set down her wine glass. In that moment, I felt the world tilt. My father wasn't joking. He wasn't mistaken. He believed I had taken $500,000 from him. And the way he looked at me, with suspicion, with disappointment, with something dangerously close to hate, told me he wasn't asking. He was accusing. That was the night my family's perfect facade cracked wide open. That was the night I discovered betrayal runs deeper than I ever imagined. And it was only the beginning. The silence after my father's words was deafening. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint clink of my mother's wine glass as she set it back down too quickly, the stem rattling against the plate. My throat was dry, my heart hammering in my chest. $500,000? I repeated, my voice cracking. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. But my father's stare was unrelenting. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of his authority pressing down like a gavel in a courtroom. Don't play games with me, Camila. 3 weeks ago, $500,000 was transferred from my business account into an account under your name. I want to know where it went. I froze. $500,000? Into my account? That was absurd. I lived paycheck to paycheck, scraping and saving just to inch closer to my dream condo. My savings account barely had $30,000, and I checked it obsessively. This accusation was so far removed from my reality that it almost felt like a bad dream. Dad, I swear, I never received that money. I didn't open any account. My voice trembled, but my words were steady. Across the table, Lisa sat perfectly still, her face pale, her eyes fixed on her plate. Her hands, usually graceful and controlled, fidgeted in her lap. For the first time in my life, my perfect sister looked like she might break. My father's jaw clenched. Without a word, he stood and crossed the room. From the sideboard, he pulled out a thick folder, slapped it onto the table, and flipped it open with a flourish of grim finality. Explain this, he demanded. Inside were bank statements, transfer slips, and photocopies of IDs. I leaned forward, and my blood ran cold. It was my name, my social security number. Even a signature that looked eerily like mine. The documents detailed the transfer of $500,000 from Matthews Financial to an account at Southwest Bank, an account allegedly opened by me. I shook my head violently. No, this isn't real. That's not my signature. I've never even been to Southwest Bank. But the more I denied it, the more my father's eyes hardened. Don't insult me, Camila. The paperwork is airtight. Even the bank security footage shows someone matching your description opening the account. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. How could someone fake not only my signature but my entire identity? My pulse roared in my ears. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. Peter, there must be a mistake. Camila would never. Enough, my father snapped, his voice echoing off the walls. The evidence is right here. Either she explains herself or she faces the consequences. I looked around the table desperately, searching for an ally. My mother's eyes darted between us, filled with confusion and fear. Lisa, however, sat frozen like a statue. She hadn't uttered a single word, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her napkin, and her face was drained of all color. Something wasn't right. Dad, please listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to steady. I didn't do this. I've been saving every cent for my condo. Why would I risk everything for money that isn't mine? $500,000? That's insane. But my father wasn't hearing me. His expression was stone, carved from years of seeing the world in numbers, not people. Then, with terrifying finality, he muttered, If you won't tell me the truth, someone else will. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. The sharp sound jolted me like an electric shock. My mother gasped, rising halfway from her seat. My father glanced at his watch, his expression grim. Right on time, he said. I felt my stomach twist. Right on time? The sound of heavy footsteps approached, and moments later, 2 uniformed officers followed my father back into the dining room. With them was a woman in plain clothes. Detective Roberts. She introduced herself with clipped professionalism. The entire room seemed to shrink around me. Miss Matthews, the detective said, her voice steady but not unkind. Based on the evidence provided, bank records, signatures, and security footage, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud and grand theft. My body went numb. Arrest? Fraud? This wasn't real. It couldn't be. My mother let out a strangled cry. Lisa dropped her fork with a clatter that made me flinch. This is insane, I shouted, my voice cracking. I didn't take any money. You can't do this. But my father slammed his hand against the table, rattling the silverware. Don't lie anymore, Camila. You've disgraced this family. Own up to what you've done. Tears blurred my vision. Dad, please, I swear, I didn't do this. You have to believe me. The detective began reading me my Miranda rights, her words echoing like a death sentence. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I could barely hear her over the pounding of my heart. My world, my reputation, my career, my family was crumbling around me, and across the table Lisa's face was the palest of all. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something, but she stayed silent. That silence told me more than any words could. Something about this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a setup. And I had a sinking suspicion that my sister knew exactly what was happening. The room was heavy with tension, the detective's words still hanging in the air like a storm cloud. My father's glare burned into me, while my mother wrung her hands helplessly. But it was Lisa's face that drew my attention most, pale, rigid, and betraying tiny cracks in her flawless mask. Her fork lay abandoned, her eyes darting between me and the detective, as if calculating a way out. She looked less like the picture-perfect banker and more like someone cornered by her own secrets. I opened my mouth to protest again, but before I could speak, my grandmother's voice rang out from the doorway. Enough. The room stilled. My grandmother, Margaret Matthews, widowed, 81, and sharper than any of us, stood with her cane planted firmly on the hardwood floor. She hadn't been expected at dinner that night, but somehow she was here, watching the chaos unravel. Peter, she said firmly, turning her sharp eyes on my father, you think you're so clever with your spreadsheets and balance sheets, but you've forgotten the simplest rule. Money can be traced. And guilt, she added, her eyes narrowing on Lisa, always leaks through the eyes before the mouth. Lisa flinched. Grandma, please, Lisa began, but her voice cracked. Don't please me, Grandma interrupted. I've lived long enough to see lies take down entire families. I saw it with my brother after the war. I saw it with your cousin's inheritance. And I see it here, tonight. My father frowned. Mother, this isn't the time for your... It's exactly the time, she cut in, her voice commanding the room. You've built your life worshiping money, Peter, and you've raised your daughters under that same shadow, valuing one for her bank account and dismissing the other for her heart. Well, congratulations. Look where it's gotten us. I felt a lump rise in my throat. For the first time that night, someone was defending me. Grandma took a step forward, her cane tapping with each movement. Camila, she said, her gaze softening when it landed on me. You may not have $500,000 in the bank, but you've always been rich in integrity. I know you didn't do this. And Lisa, her voice sharpened again, your silence screams louder than any denial. Lisa's face crumbled. Her hands trembled violently as she reached for her glass of water but missed, knocking it over. The liquid spread across the tablecloth, seeping toward the incriminating documents my father had laid out. No, Lisa whispered, shaking her head, but tears brimmed in her eyes. Grandma tilted her head. Then say it. If you didn't do this, say it. Say your sister's guilty. But Lisa didn't. Her lips parted, then closed again. The silence was deafening. The detective's eyes sharpened. She noticed the same thing we all did. Lisa's mask was cracking. My father, however, refused to see it. This is irrelevant, he snapped. The evidence points to Camila. That's all that matters. No, Peter, Grandma said coldly. The evidence points to someone who wanted it to look like Camila. And I'd wager Lisa here has been spending more than she can afford. Lisa's shoulders shook, her composure disintegrating. Stop, she whispered. But Grandma pressed harder. How many nights have you been sneaking out to the casino, How many loans did you take to cover your losses? You think no one notices, but an old woman always does. Pride makes people sloppy. The room gasped collectively. My father froze, his face draining of color. Lisa buried her face in her hands. A sob broke free, raw and unrestrained. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she cried. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. The detective leaned forward. Fix what, Lisa? Lisa shook her head violently, as if trying to hold back the confession clawing its way out. That's when Grandma's tone softened again, almost maternal. Child, listen to me. Secrets rot you from the inside. And dragging your sister down won't save you. It will destroy you. If you want any chance of redemption, speak now. Don't let someone else pay for your sins. The room was silent, waiting. My father's face was ashen, my mother's eyes wide with horror. Lisa lifted her head, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She looked at me, then at Grandma, then finally at my father. It wasn't Camila, she whispered. Her voice was trembling but clear. It was me. The words detonated like a bomb. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. My father staggered back a step, as though struck. Tears blurred my vision. Relief and heartbreak collided inside me. Lisa sobbed harder. I gambled. I lost. I borrowed, and when the debts piled up, I panicked. Scott said he had a plan, that we could use Camila's name. He said no one would ever believe she'd do something like this. That it would be the perfect cover, I thought it would buy me time. Detective Roberts scribbled in her notepad. Scott? She pressed. Lisa nodded miserably. Scott Williams. He promised he'd fix everything if I went along with it, but now it's all out of control. My father's face hardened, but this time not toward me. He turned to Lisa with something I had never seen before. Betrayal. Grandma exhaled heavily, shaking her head. And so the perfect sister crumbles. She turned back to me, placing a weathered hand over mine. Her grip was firm, steady. Camila, child, you hold your head high. This isn't your burden to carry. But let this be a lesson. Family will test you in ways the world never could. Stand strong, or they'll take everything. Her words burned into me like an oath. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. Let my family's dysfunction drag me under, or create a new path, one built on boundaries and truth. And with Grandma's words echoing in my ears, the outline of Operation Consequence began to form in my mind. If Lisa had dug this grave, then she would face the consequences, not me. For once, I would not be the quiet shadow. I would be the one who stood tall. The night Lisa broke down, admitting the truth in front of everyone, left the family fractured beyond repair. The dinner that had started with roasted chicken and polished silverware ended with tears, silence, and the sound of handcuffs. I thought that would be the end of it, but if life had taught me anything, it was that endings were rarely that simple. For days afterward, the house felt like a tomb. My parents barely spoke. My father locked himself in his study, refusing to take calls from his business associates. My mother wandered from room to room as if she could tidy away the shame by fluffing pillows and rearranging flowers. I stayed away. Part of me wanted to shut the door forever, but another part knew the storm wasn't finished. Lisa's confession had cracked open the truth, but it hadn't settled the debts or the damage. Scott Williams was still out there, and the missing money hadn't magically reappeared. Grandma called me 3 nights later. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the weight of years in it. Camila, she said, don't think for a second that this is over. A confession is one thing. Consequences are another. You need to decide, are you going to stand back and let your father twist this into something else, or are you going to make sure the truth sticks? Her words cut deep. I realized then that this wasn't just about Lisa. This was about me, too. For years, I'd lived in my sister's shadow, letting my family define me by what I wasn't. Not successful enough, not ambitious enough, not Lisa. But now the cracks in the perfect sister facade gave me an opening I never thought I'd have, the chance to step into my own light. So I made a plan. The following Sunday, my parents called for a family discussion. My first instinct was to say no, but Grandma's voice echoed in my head. Family will test you in ways the world never could. Stand strong, or they'll take everything. I agreed to come, but this time I wouldn't walk in as the timid daughter. That morning, I dressed deliberately. No soft pastels or teacher cardigans that made me look like a harmless background character. Instead, I wore a navy blazer, black trousers, and my hair tied back tight. Professional, commanding, a woman who knew her worth. Before leaving, I packed a folder. Inside were copies of every email, every message, every financial record I had gathered with Detective Roberts' help. Hard evidence that pointed squarely to Lisa and her so-called partner, Scott Williams. When I arrived at my parents' home, the scene was already set. My father at the head of the dining table, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother sitting beside him, eyes red-rimmed. Lisa wasn't there. She was being held pending charges, but her absence was its own presence, like a shadow draped over the chairs. Grandma was there, though, perched at the far end with her cane resting against the table. She gave me a subtle nod as I entered, her way of saying, "You're not alone." My father didn't waste time. "Camila," he said, his voice hard, "we need to talk about how you plan to help us fix this mess." I sat down slowly, folding my hands over my folder. This isn't my mess to fix, Dad. Lisa made her choices. Scott Williams made his. And I won't let either of them drag me down with them. His eyes narrowed. Don't you dare wash your hands of this. You're part of this family. You'll do what's necessary to protect our name. There it was, the same tactic he had used my whole life. Guilt, obligation, reputation over reality. But this time, I didn't flinch. Protecting the family doesn't mean sacrificing myself, I said evenly. I've already been accused once for something I didn't do. I won't play the scapegoat again. My mother reached for my hand. Sweetheart, please. Your father is just under a lot of stress. Can't we just sit quietly until this blows over? I pulled back gently. Mom, this isn't going to blow over. $500,000 doesn't disappear quietly. The police are involved. The courts will be involved. And pretending otherwise doesn't save us. It destroys us. Grandma's cane tapped once on the floor. She's right, she said firmly. This family has hidden behind appearances for too long. Peter, you can't sweep this under the rug. Not this time. My father's jaw clenched. He looked from me to Grandma, then back to me. So what do you propose, Camila? That we let your sister rot in prison while our name is dragged through the mud? I slid the folder across the table. I propose we face the truth. Lisa isn't the only one responsible here. Scott Williams is the puppeteer, and if we don't expose him, Lisa will take the fall alone, and so will our family. My father opened the folder, scanning the documents. His face paled as he realized what he was looking at. Offshore accounts, gambling debts, even surveillance reports tying Lisa and Scott together. This can't. His voice faltered. For the first time, the great Peter Matthews looked small. It's real, I said firmly, and the police already know. The question is, are you going to keep fighting the truth, or are you going to stand with me and Grandma to confront it? Silence stretched across the table. Finally, Grandma spoke again. Peter, it's time. Stop clinging to the fantasy of your perfect daughter. The cracks are already there. Let them show. And maybe, just maybe, this family can rebuild on something real. My father closed the folder slowly, his hands trembling. And in that moment, I knew the confrontation was no longer about Lisa. It was about all of us, our family mythology shattering under the weight of truth. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. The setup was complete. The confrontation had begun. Blue Note Cafe was the kind of place where people pretended not to notice each other. Students with headphones buried in laptops, lawyers whispering into Bluetooth headsets, couples leaning across tables with conspiratorial smiles. The clinking of mugs and low hum of espresso machines made it perfect for quiet deals, or for traps. That morning, my hands trembled slightly as I wrapped them around a paper cup of cappuccino. I wasn't here for caffeine. I was bait. Detective Roberts' words echoed in my ears. You won't actually be alone. We'll have eyes everywhere. Just keep him talking long enough for us to trace him. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I was no cop, no spy, just a third-grade teacher who'd been thrust into a family scandal bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. But Scott Williams had threatened me, directly. And if I didn't help end this, he would keep circling like a shark. At precisely 10:02, a man in a gray suit approached my table. Average height, thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like any accountant in the city, forgettable in every way, which made him dangerous. Miss Matthews, he said, sliding into the chair across from me without waiting for an invitation. His smile was polite but empty. You may call me John. I raised an eyebrow. That's not your real name. No, he admitted smoothly, but it will do, Mr. G. Williams asked me to see if you're worth his time. I leaned back, feigning calm. Funny, I thought he already decided I was. For a moment, his mask slipped. His eyes sharpened, assessing me. Then he chuckled softly. Clever. You get that from your father? My stomach tightened. He knew too much already. I sipped my cappuccino to cover my nerves. Scott wants something from me. I assume it's information. John folded his hands. You've been nosy. Talking to police. Digging into matters that don't concern you. That makes Scott nervous. Nervous men make rash decisions. But he's willing to strike a deal. I tilted my head, playing along. And what does this deal look like? Simple, John said. You hand over everything you've gathered. Every document, every lead, every recording. In exchange, Scott ensures your sister gets a lighter sentence, maybe even walks free sooner than expected. My heart pounded. They were dangling Lisa in front of me like bait, assuming guilt would make me cave. I let a silence stretch, then asked, "And if I don't?" John's polite smile returned, colder this time. "Accidents happen. Teachers lose their jobs. Families unravel further. You've already seen what Scott is capable of." I forced myself to meet his gaze. Threats don't scare me. I've already lost enough. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even respect. He leaned closer. "You're braver than I expected. That's dangerous." From the corner of my eye, I spotted movement, a woman in a red scarf, stirring her coffee too deliberately. One of Robert's officers. They were in place. I decided to push. "You talk about deals. But here's the thing, John. I know more than you think. Offshore accounts. Server backups in Eastern Europe. Names of other victims." I let the words hang, hoping the detective's tech team was recording every syllable. His mask cracked again. He adjusted his glasses, voice tightening. "Be careful, Miss Matthews. Knowledge is heavy. It can crush you if you're not strong enough to carry it." He stood abruptly, slipping a business card across the table, blank except for a number. "Scott will be in touch. If you're smart, you'll cooperate. If not, well, let's hope you're smart." He left as swiftly as he came, vanishing into the cafe's morning crowd. Within seconds, Detective Roberts slid into his seat. Her gray eyes glittered with restrained triumph. "We got him." His phone pinged through 3 VPNs, but our text cracked it. "Vancouver, just like your sister said." Relief flooded me, mingled with adrenaline. "So this is it? You'll catch him?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "We're close, but don't fool yourself. This isn't over until Williams is in cuffs. And even then, men like him always leave shadows." I looked down at the business card still on the table, the blank surface suddenly feeling heavier than stone. This wasn't just a game of cat and mouse. This was war, and I had just painted a target on my back. The morning after the coffee shop meeting, I woke up to 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail from my father. His voice, usually booming with confidence, sounded worn and fragile. "Camila, we need to talk. The family's meeting tonight. No excuses. Be here." My stomach sank. I already knew what family meeting meant. Not a discussion, but a tribunal. By 7 p.m., I sat at the polished mahogany table in my parents' dining room, the same table where just weeks earlier I'd been accused of stealing $500,000. Now, piles of paper and thick folders covered the surface. My father sat at the head, Lisa's seat empty. My mother's lips were tight, her hands trembling as she poured wine she didn't drink. Across from me, 2 aunts and an uncle whispered among themselves, clearly invited to witness and pressure me. The air felt thick, suffocating. Dad began without preamble. "Camila, we've been advised by our family attorney to put things in writing, to clarify responsibilities, to protect the family's name." He slid a document toward me. At the top, bold letters read, "Family Agreement, Confidentiality and Cooperation." I skimmed the text. Paragraphs of legal jargon blurred together, but the meaning was clear. I was to sign an agreement stating I would not pursue charges against Lisa beyond what was already in motion. I would acknowledge that misunderstandings had occurred, but refrain from making public statements damaging to the family name. In return, my father promised financial support, including help with the condo down payment I'd been saving for. It was a gag order, a bribe wrapped in the language of family unity. I pushed the papers back. "So you want me to lie? Pretend Lisa didn't steal $500,000? Pretend she didn't frame me?" Dad's jaw clenched. "This isn't about lies, it's about survival. Our reputation, our business, it can't withstand another scandal. If this gets dragged out in the press, we all lose." I glanced around the table. My aunts avoided my eyes. My uncle stared at the ceiling. My mother whispered, "Just sign it, Camila, please. For all of us." The weight of their stares pressed down on me. The same old narrative. Family first, even if it meant burying the truth. But something inside me rebelled. I heard Grandma's words echo in my memory. Consequences are teachers, not enemies. Without them, we never grow. I stood slowly. "You're asking me to sacrifice my integrity so Lisa doesn't face consequences. Haven't we done that her whole life? Covered for her? Applauded her?" pretended she was perfect while she made one reckless choice after another? And now look where we are. My father's voice turned sharp. Watch your tone. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. For once, you're going to watch mine. I was nearly arrested because of her. I lost my classroom, my reputation. Parents whisper about me at the grocery store. And now you want me to sign away my right to defend myself? No, Dad, not this time. Silence fell. My heart pounded in my ears, but I forced myself to keep going. I'll tell you what I will sign. I pulled a folded paper from my purse, the draft lease agreement for my condo purchase, annotated with my lawyer's notes. I'll sign documents that build my future, not destroy it. I'll sign my mortgage, my curriculum plans, my own life choices, but I will not sign away the truth. My father's face darkened, but behind the anger was something else. Fear. He wasn't just protecting Lisa. He was protecting the empire he had built, the image of the Matthews family as untouchable pillars of success. You're choosing yourself over your family, he accused. No, I said softly. I'm choosing honesty over denial, and maybe that's what this family has needed all along. For the first time, my mother lifted her head, her eyes glistening. She's right, Peter. He turned sharply. Eleanor. She's right, she repeated, her voice steady now. We've been protecting appearances for decades. It nearly destroyed us. If Camila hadn't stood her ground, Lisa's mess would still be buried under lies. I won't force her to sign. The room erupted. My aunts whispered furiously. My uncle muttered about shame and loyalty. My father slammed his fist on the table, but my mother's words held the line. That night, I walked out without signing their so-called agreement. My legs trembled, but my spirit felt strangely light. The next morning, I made my own set of rules, not for my family, but for myself. 1. Truth comes first. No more silence to protect others' reputations. 2. Boundaries are not betrayal. Saying no doesn't make me selfish, it makes me sane. 3. Help must be healthy. Support should lift people, not shield them from consequences. 4. Family isn't just blood, it's anyone who respects your worth. As I taped those rules above my desk, I realized something profound. The real battle wasn't about $500,000 or Lisa's crimes. It was about reclaiming my voice in a family that had silenced it for years. And for the first time, I was winning. The weeks after that tense family meeting were some of the hardest and most transformative of my life. Walking out of my parents' house without signing their so-called agreement had felt liberating in the moment, but the reality hit fast. Calls stopped. Texts went unanswered. Family dinners, once a monthly ritual, simply ceased. For the first time in years, I was completely on my own. At first, the silence was suffocating. My father's disapproval hung over me like a storm cloud. My aunt spread whispers through the family grapevine, labeling me the selfish one who had betrayed her sister. Even my mother, despite defending me in the moment, retreated into quiet distance. I was the outcast. But in that solitude, something unexpected happened. I started breathing again. Instead of fielding constant guilt trips, I poured my energy into rebuilding my career. Though the school district had temporarily reassigned me to curriculum development, I threw myself into the work. I drafted a pilot financial literacy program for elementary students, blending math with real-life lessons about budgeting, saving, and making responsible choices. When I presented it to the school board, they were stunned. This is groundbreaking, the superintendent said, flipping through my slides. You've managed to turn a scandal into a teaching moment. We want to test this district-wide. For the first time in months, I felt proud again. Not defined by betrayal or suspicion, but by my own work. Meanwhile, Lisa's world crumbled. She remained in custody, denied bail because of the sheer scale of the fraud. I chose to visit her once, unsure of what to expect. She looked nothing like the polished banker I'd known. Hair unkempt, skin pale, eyes hollow. Why did you come? She asked, voice hoarse. I wanted to see if you're ready to stop lying, I replied. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, I saw my sister stripped bare of arrogance. I ruined everything, Camila. I ruined you. And for what? A rush at a blackjack table. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was the first time I believed she could change. Back home, I leaned into therapy sessions with Dr. Alvarez. She helped me untangle years of being the less important daughter, the shadow sibling. Camila, she said gently during one session, you spent decades chasing crumbs of validation from a father who only measured worth in dollars. What you've done now, drawing boundaries, refusing silence, that's not betrayal, that's healing. Those words became my anchor. 6 months later, my life looked different in every way. The condo I had dreamed of for years finally became mine. Signing the closing documents with my own name, no fraud, no shadows, just me, felt like the ultimate reclamation. The walls were bare, the furniture secondhand, but to me, it was a palace. On move-in day, my mother surprised me by showing up with a casserole dish and a nervous smile. I wanted to see your new place, she said. As we ate at my tiny table, she whispered, I was wrong to stay silent so long. You were brave in ways I wasn't, and I'm proud of you, Camila. Tears blurred my vision. It was the first time she had ever said those words. My father, as expected, took longer. But after Scott Williams was captured in Vancouver and much of the stolen money traced, he finally called. His voice was gruff, but softer than I'd ever heard. Camila, Detective Roberts told me you helped bait him, that without you, they might never have caught him. I didn't answer right away. I misjudged you, he continued. I thought you were weak because you didn't chase money. But you've shown more strength than all of us. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Lisa, in the end, accepted a plea deal. She received a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against Scott's network. From prison, she wrote me letters, sometimes apologies, sometimes reflections, sometimes simple updates. I didn't respond to all of them, but each time I read one, the bitterness in my chest loosened a little. The greatest shift, though, was inside me. I no longer lived in Lisa's shadow, no longer begged for scraps of my father's approval. I had my own light, and I wasn't afraid to stand in it. The scandal that nearly destroyed me had instead rebuilt me. Stronger, clearer, boundaried. One Saturday evening, as I unpacked boxes in my condo, I found myself smiling. I had pinned Grandma's words above my desk. Consequences are teachers, not enemies. Lisa had finally met hers, and I had finally embraced mine, the consequence of daring to tell the truth. As I sipped tea on my new balcony, the city lights twinkling below, I whispered to myself, this is the life I built. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Family pressure and betrayal can break you, or it can teach you the most important lesson of all, that protecting your truth and your boundaries is never selfish. It's self-respect. In the end, standing up for yourself may be the hardest choice, but it's also the one that can save your future. Have you ever faced betrayal within your own family? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this video hit close to home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. More real stories are coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss the next one.